Anthony Brindisi, Assemblyman, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
It's been
Bill.
a crazy morning. Crazy morning
I
so
walked
far.
into a tirade.
A little bee's nest going on.
That's nothing.
Yeah, that's nothing. Somebody hit my car over at Whitesboro High School the other night.
You're kidding.
I hope they realize it would be a lot easier to come forward and turn it into their insurance than for us to find their license plate on the cameras that are over the parking lot, which we're working on after the show today.
Well, because then it's a hit and run.
Yeah, why would you want to go through that? Just pay for the thing. It'll be, I don't know, $1,000 to fix the hood on my car.
And honestly, if you back into somebody's
another
car and you
$500
do
in my
a claim,
pocket?
odds are they're not going to be. Odds are they're not going to. The insurance is not going to go up that much if it's
no, it
less
probably
than
wouldn't even go up.
$1,000.
It probably wouldn't even go up.
It was a kid who got scared.
Probably.
You think it's a kid?
I hope so.
There was no kid that was driving the truck that was parked in front of me.
You never know.
Okay, if he was, he shouldn't have been. This thing is this was a monster.
I think Bill needs emotional distress.
I think I do. It's been rough. It's been really rough. Then
I don't
again,
know if it's Twilight.
Then again, you're running for Congress in one of the heatest races in the country.
Yeah.
So, all right, I want to get into a few things. First of all, opioid. The state recently, your family law firm was hired to handle this. Can we get into this a little bit?
Sure.
Because in a story in the Daily Caller, the headline was, Brindisi family law firm could make ultimately millions off this deal. Is it an inside deal? What happened here?
I don't have all the details because
Yeah.
I'm not involved with the law firm with that in that regard. But it's not just our law firm. Our law firm is partnering with a couple Syracuse area law firms, and they're representing some counties in lawsuits against some of the drug manufacturers who were aware, as we learn more and more about the opioid crisis, who were very knowledgeable that these drugs were addictive, but marketed them anyways and pumped them into communities and created a crisis. Not just drug companies, lots of things, a lot of people to blame for this. But in any event, because of that, counties have, and all municipalities have seen increases in social services budgets. They've had to spend more money for treatment. They've had to increase police. You talk to the sheriff here in Oneida County, he'll tell you that 7 out of 10 inmates that are coming into the correctional facility admit using or abusing opioids, which is a staggering number.
Yeah.
And that's increasing taxes on everybody because of the counties and the municipalities have to combat that crisis.
Did you have any involvement in the agreement put in place with these
None.
municipalities?
None.
And ultimately, it is what your family law firm does. That's what they do.
What they do.
Anybody else have questions on this one?
Does that mean that you can't? Can you be involved in it because it's a state contract?
It's not a state contract. It's a contract between the counties or municipalities that have hired the law firms to represent them. It's not just something that's happening here. It's happening all across the country. It's very similar to tobacco cases, from my understanding. You know, the municipalities got together and sued tobacco companies because they were marketing cigarettes and not telling people that they were addictive, things like that. But, look, we have an opioid crisis. There are many companies that turned a blind eye to that, and they're going to be held accountable by municipalities and states and other entities who are going to go after them.
So as far there's no restriction for you to be involved. Would you be involved in this? Will you be working on it?
No.
The Senate.
Let's hope not after November.
Right. Well, you never know.
You never know in this world. So
the state Senate just passed a law, I think, that would add a possible homicide charge or murder charge if a drug dealer. They could connect the drugs that killed somebody with an overdose to that drug dealer, that they would be charged with homicide. What are your thoughts on that? And is that something you see having any legs?
I honestly don't know. I'm not very familiar with the law they just passed, so I'd have to take a look at it to give you a good answer. But I think this is a problem that's going to take treatment. It's going to take education and prevention. I'm not sure if we can arrest our way out of this problem. It's going to have to take many different things to get our hands around it. You know, again, bring it back to the sheriff, who I just had a conversation with this past week. We have the tools and the know-how how to cure people of this addiction. The problem is there's not enough funding in place for treatment programs in the community. There's not enough funding in place for treatment programs in the correctional facilities, and the insurance companies don't cover, in many cases, long-term treatment programs which are necessary to get your hands around this and to cure people of this addiction. That's where I think the focus should be. Obviously, there has to be punishment for major drug traffickers. We don't want to go easy on that. But the focus really needs to be on treatment, on education, and trying to get those kinds of programs in place in our correctional facilities and our community to try and get people the help they need.
Editorial, I want to just rapid fire here because we've got a lot to hit you on here this morning and a little time to do it. So the issue of this, a lot of conservatives unhappy with the president today on signing this bill to avoid a government shutdown. Nobody wants a government shutdown, but some conservatives, many, believe the president basically conceded here by signing this. And part of that reason is because it limits how many immigration and customs enforcement agents. There's no new funding for the new wall prototypes, which has been heralded, of course, the campaign and in recent conversations and interviews. Also continues funding for sanctuary cities and Planned Parenthood. A lot of conservatives very upset with the president. There were over 90 Republicans who voted against this. If it were not for the Democrats voting for it, it would not have gone through. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is one that voted for it. I was surprised to see that she didn't vote against it, especially with her history in the Assembly, where oftentimes, based on ideology, she would vote against a bill, let's say, for nano or funding coming to the area. While I'm not sure where you are on this particular bill, your thoughts on the fact that Congresswoman Tenney voted for this and not against it?
Well, she campaigned as a fiscal hawk and someone who was against budget deficits and deficit spending, and we're seeing some of the largest increases in the debt and deficit that we've seen in a while. And I was reading about this morning the one senator from Louisiana who's a Republican who said, I don't know how we as Republicans can complain about Obama deficits at the same time we're doing the same thing. We're seeing the debt grow to $21 trillion in this country, which is its highest level it's ever been, and it's gonna impact our future generations who are going to be stuck paying this bill. So it shouldn't be just a campaign issue for the Democrats or the Republicans. It should be an issue that we're tackling when we get in office, and not increasing debts that my great-great-grandchildren are going to be paying off.
Another story out of the Daily Caller. Staff turnover data shows Claudia Tenney as among the top 10 for staff turnovers in the House for the 2017 year. Thoughts on that one?
I didn't know that, but I do know that I believe that she's on her third chief of staff right now. That's unusual. You want to have consistency in your office. You want to have people.
They actually refer to it as the worst bosses in Congress, and she's on the top 10 list.
That's not a good list to be on.
All right. I want to ask you about the deep state and the deep pockets one would need to buy a $31,000 conference table. My question would be, she defended Ben Carson and said that this was actually not Ben Carson's fault, nor his wife's, that she didn't order it, that the deep state ordered it, sent it to them in order to smear Ben Carson. My question would be, if that were true, why didn't Ben Carson tell the House, was it which weather committee he was speaking in front of the other day?
Yeah.
Why didn't he reveal that to House members?
He blamed his wife, I believe, not the deep state. But this is just another example of something that she has said, our congresswoman has said, which ends up being untrue. Ben Carson himself blamed his wife. I don't know what you need a $31,000 dining room table for. I don't know what that kind of table. What does that table do? Who knows? But in any event, this is a waste of taxpayer money. I would say the same thing if it's a Democrat doing it, and there's been abuses on that side as well. But it's something that should be called out. You know, she went on the radio to say that's the deep state and, you know, you can't return it because of the bureaucracy and the red tape. Well, guess what? You're a member of Congress. Pass a bill to make it easier to return these things so you don't have to worry about that red tape and the bureaucracy.
Fair enough.
You are a lawmaker.
Editorial in the paper the other day said a gentleman from Rome, you are going to be a rubber stamp for Nancy Pelosi. Where have you been? You do nothing but compliment the governor, which you did in a news clip that we have today, and we'll talk about that. I know that's why you're here, but I'm hitting you with these others. But these are all things on my mind. I'm very focused today, kind of,
focused.
I think.
Focused and all over the place.
And all over the place. Typical me.
Yeah.
So I do have to ask you, he said, where's Anthony Brindisi been on guns? He's not said a word. He's been silent. Now, we know that's not true because I think we had you
Wasn't I just on here 2 weeks ago
pinned down for about a half an hour talking about this. So, once again, what's your stance on guns?
My stance has always been the same on guns. I've always respected the rights of law-abiding gun owners to own firearms. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I do believe in things like background checks. I'm not for banning certain types of weapons, but I don't want to see certain types of firearms getting into the hands of people who want to do us harm, whether it's criminals, whether it's people who commit domestic violence, whether it's terrorists or people who are violently mentally ill. That's where I think the focus should be, is making sure that firearms don't get into the hands of those types of people, not banning certain kinds of firearms. I've always been a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I talk about guns every show I go on. I was on News Talk a couple weeks ago on KTV. I've been on here talking about it. I've been on other radio shows talking about it. So it's not something I'm hiding from at all. And I've never been a rubber stamp. If I was a rubber stamp for the governor, would I have voted for the SAFE Act? I didn't vote for the SAFE Act.
And you did not vote for the SAFE Act. Okay, and then my final here would be, there are those, Mr. Zecca, for example, that is saying, why are you not hammering Brindisi on the fact that far left groups are paying for people to protest against Claudia Tenney here? These are people on the payroll. Do you have any knowledge of far left groups having staff members here in the Utica area for the purpose of protesting against Claudia Tenney?
No. And let's stop the conspiracy theory, seriously. I mean, the ideas of deep states and far left conspiracies, it's ridiculous. People are upset because they have a representative who doesn't do town halls, despite the fact she says she loves doing town halls. They have a representative who's not listening to them and voting directly against their interests, whether it's on taxes, whether it's on health care, whether it's on, you name it. You know, you talk about the opioid crisis. She votes for a bill that will allow insurance carriers to discriminate against treatment programs that combat opioid, or defund Medicaid, which is helping people get access to treatment programs. Give me a break. That stuff has to be called out. People are upset about it, and they have every right to protest against their representative. I'm sure when I'm the representative, they're going to protest me too, but I'm going to be there doing town halls, listening to them at least.
Sue,
I was actually given an email yesterday. Seems to be an organizing going on. I guess and I'm not saying that you know anything about
the hospital downtown.
No, Citizen Action and Tenney.
So the point would be, how is any anti-Tenney protest any different than the organization that has been created against the hospital downtown? How is it any different, and how is this not the pot calling the kettle black?
There are organizations on both sides who are going to protest certain policies. Look, I have talked to a lot of people who have come up to me and said, I've never, ever been involved in politics. I've never come to a fundraiser. I've never been to a protest before, but I'm so upset what I'm seeing with our representative that I feel compelled to have to do that. And that's their right as an American to be able to protest what they see as something wrong with their representative.
So there might be groups that have come into the area. This is a highly contested race. To think that there might be some groups that have come into the area that have paid staff that are helping people organize?
There are groups like Reclaim New York that are in this area who are organizing, who claim to be nonprofit and have no political agenda,
so
but
you
who
feel
have direct political agenda.
There are on both sides. There could very well be someone in town helping organize that has a paid staff member.
Helping organize protesters?
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone in town that's helping organize protesters.
Okay. Fair enough. Sue in Utica with a question. Hi, Sue. You're on the radio.
Hi. Good morning. I see we're on the bash Claudia Tenney roll this morning.
No. I'm just reading stories that are out there, Sue. These are real stories. You can call it bashing if you want. They're real stories. Now, if you're going to behave, I'll let you speak. Otherwise, I'm going to dump you. If there's any personal attacks, any of your sleazy little comments, you're gone. So you're on warning. Go ahead, Sue, with your respectful question or comments.
But listen, I've got 4 questions for Mr. Brindisi.
You don't have time for 4. I've got 50 seconds. Go ahead.
The first one is, he was just endorsed by Gifford. Why hasn't he put that up?
Okay, next question.
They're an anti-gun organization.
Next question, quickly. As I'm telling you, you're up against a hard break. We'll have him answer him on the other side. Next question.
No, and then another one. Hello?
We're here.
I'm here.
Okay. The other one that I want to ask is, he speaks of, paying for the opiate crisis for generations. But, with...
All right, you're going to have to hold. You're going to have to hold through the break because I'm up against Fox News coming up. Can you hang for a second?
Sure.
Sue, he's going to stay and answer your questions, despite some of the horrific things you've said about him. He's going to stay and take your questions. Sit tight. We'll come back.